All right, Sam here. I want to take a couple minutes and we're going to, do an updated version of Let's Talk Caulk. And this time I've got more caulking adhesives here that we're going to go over. Last time I kind of covered just roughly latex, silicone, and just a generic polymer. Today we got a couple different types of polymers we're going to talk about. And I've also got some of the other types of adhesives, the construction adhesive and the polyurethane that we just mentioned last time. So today I'm going to kind of go over all of them. We got a ton of people calling in and sending emails afterwards to get more details. So this is going to be a little bit of a longer video than what we normally do, but I'm going to go a lot more in depth on each of these adhesives and how they should be used or what the best practice is. So over here on the left, we have our liquid nails. So liquid nails is a construction adhesive. I do know that there are a lot of people that use this when they are actually setting their countertops in place. They put down the liquid nails on top of the cabinets and they set the countertops on top of it. Now, the main reason for that is this is readily available at every single Lowe's, at every single Home Depot, and it is also extremely cheap. Like a tube of this is probably $3 or $4. So it is a very popular adhesive for doing that just because of the availability and the price. Now, that being said, it is not the best adhesive for that application, and I'm going to kind of get into that. So when this dries, it dries like a rock. It is solid. So when it comes to using it to bond a countertop to the cabinets, it's not the best adhesive because that countertop is going to expand and contract at a different material than the countertop, and when they expand and contract over time, they're going to fail. A rigid bonding adhesive should only be used with a like material when it comes to a single component like this. So if you are gluing like wood trim to wood trim, or you're gluing a masonry block to another masonry block, which is kind of what this is set up for, that's where you should be using it. Honestly, where we see this fail the most is when it comes to bar tops on top of a pony wall. So on that pony wall, you either have a 3.5-inch 2x4 or a 5.5-inch 2x6. And then you are putting your bar top on top of it. We see these fail all the time when construction adhesive like liquid nails is used, right? Most fabricators are only offering a 1-year warranty. You can bond, if you put a ton of this on that pony wall top and put your bar top on it, there's a good chance it'll hold for a year, right? If they keep their house a consistent temperature and nothing's really expanding and contracting, nobody's putting any weight or throwing anything on top of that bar top, it'll probably hold for the year. Generally, where we see these fail is between years 2 and 5. And what happens is over time, the house heats and cools, and the top is expanding and contracting at a different rate than that pony wall underneath. And eventually that rigid bond just fails. And it might be there, but let's say someone throws their purse on it, or someone sets their kid on it, or somebody leans on it. Sometimes that impact is enough to just shear that bond and it fails and it falls. Now, when that happens, the best case is you got an upset customer because their countertop just failed. That's the best case, right? Like even if you come back and fix it, they're still mad at you because their countertop failed. Worst case is that top falls and lands on somebody's leg or lands on somebody's foot and breaks it. And that has happened. We have heard stories of that happening. And if that happens, you've got a lawsuit or a huge insurance claim that you're having to file. And honestly, if you would have used something else, you wouldn't have had that issue. Now, when it comes to setting bar tops on top of a pony wall, you could use silicone. The problem is silicone's really not a structural adhesive. It is more of a sealant. So what we recommend is if you are going to be setting your bar top on top of a pony wall, you need to use a polymer. And we're going to get more in depth on this when we get towards the end. But just remember, if you got a heavy countertop and you set that island countertop down onto those cabinets and you use this, even if it fails, that countertop's so heavy, it's not going to shift and move anywhere. If you're putting it on a small countertop and that fails, over time, that might shift and move. And if you do it on a bar top, it could fail and it could hurt somebody. So best practice, I would just get rid of the liquid nails and the construction adhesive, and I would not even use it in countertop applications. Now, it has a purpose, right? If you read it on here, it's for paneling, wood and foam molding. It's perfect for that application. That's what it's designed for. This is not the best solution for countertops, though. Now, the next construction adhesive or the caulking that you might see in the market is like this quad OSI. It's super popular at Home Depot, Lowe's. It is more expensive, and this is a polyurethane. And where these are used is for like windows, doors, and exterior trims. And the reason for that is the polyurethanes are extremely durable when it comes to outdoor elements and UV. They hold up great. You can paint them. They're just an excellent performing adhesive when it comes to outdoors. So if you're doing exterior trim around your home and you've got the gaps, caulk it in with some polyurethane, and that is going to last for years and it's going to hold up. This is where this excels. Now, there are also polyurethanes that are designed specifically for roofing applications and shingles and flashing. So again, you don't want to use a door and trim polyurethane for roofing, and you don't want to use a roofing polyurethane for door and trim. There are specific polyurethanes for each of those applications. So if you need that and you're doing exterior trim, this is the perfect adhesive. Now, again, this really doesn't have any, you're not going to really use this in a countertop application. And let's say, unless you're like doing an outdoor kitchen and you're also doing the fascia and the trim, and you've been asked by the homeowner to caulk that in, then you might use this on an outdoor kitchen. But in the normal countertop world, this really isn't going to come into play. Now, these are the adhesives in the countertop world that you're going to see the most and you're going to use. The first here is the DAP latex adhesive. DAP is the most popular latex caulking on the market. They probably have 80 or 90% market share. It doesn't really matter what store you go into, whether it's Home Depot, Lowe's, Ace, Menards, At Home, Tractor Supply, they all have DAP. Now, where DAP excels is when you have an application that is going to be painted. So if you have a backsplash that's coming up and you've got the drywall behind it and you're caulking that gap between the drywall and the backsplash, you're going to want to use DAP because when it dries, you can paint right down to the backsplash and it's going to hold that paint excellent. So this is in an application where maybe you have two unlike surfaces and one of them is going to get paint. This fills gaps extremely well. This is super easy to clean up. It's very easy to work with, and it is paintable. This is not a structural silicone. It's nothing you would ever want to use to hold anything down like a countertop to a cabinet or a sink to the undermount. This is strictly for filling gaps along like backsplashes or walls that are going to get painted. That is where the latex excels. Then we move over to your silicone adhesives. Now, when it comes to silicones, there are two types of silicones. The first is an acid cure, and the second is a neutral cure. Now, you're probably not going to see very many acid cures on the market when you go to Home Depot or Lowe's or Grand Courts or BBI. Most of them are going to be neutral cure silicones. Now, the difference between a neutral cure and an acid cure is the acid cures are a lot cheaper. So they're a much cheaper silicone. They dry faster, but they mostly work on extremely non-porous surfaces like ceramics and glass. They can be corrosive if you put them on metals, but you're really not going to see those. However, if you are bonding like stone, quartz, and solid surface, you want to make sure you're not really using an acid cure, because if you're in the customer's home, it is going to stink. It smells like vinegar and it is extremely strong. So the homeowner's not going to like that. And then it also is not going to bond that well to more porous surfaces. So that's really more of a specialty for like glass, ceramics, and things of those nature in areas where you need a fast cure and you're not concerned about smell. When you're coming to install countertops, you're going to want to use a neutral cure. And if you look at most of these, it'll say on here, like this one, it says features, neutral type. It's a neutral cure. So when it comes to silicones, there are a wide variety when it comes to the pricing. You can get silicone as low as probably $2, $3 a tube. You can also get silicone that's expensive as $12, $15, $20 a tube. If you are an installer, we run into kind of two different trains of thought on this. We have some people that use silicone as they carry one color silicone, which is usually translucent white, and they use that for everything. They'll use that to attach the countertops to the cabinets. They'll use it to adhere sinks for undermount sinks. They'll use it in the gap between the backsplash and the countertop to seal that so no water leaks. A lot of times they'll carry like a white and a translucent and maybe a clear, and that will do 95% of everything they need to do with silicone. And that's kind of a good idea. right? So if you're looking for just a one-stop shop and, hey, what can I have on my guy's truck so that no matter what happens, they have a bullet that will take care of it, silicones are a great option for that. Now, most of the guys that I know that are doing that, they are carrying a translucent white silicone, just because translucent white is really good at pulling that joint between the backsplash and the countertop on probably 90% of the countertops. That translucent white kind of bends the light and kind of blends the colors. Whereas if you use a clear silicone, sometimes you can still see that gap. The translucent white blends that. And then they can also use it for undermounting sinks. They can use it for adhering the countertops. It's kind of just a one-stop shop. Now, if you truly want to take your game to the next level, right, and take your fabrication company and be as good as you can be, you're going to want to kind of get more specific with your adhesives. Now, it does mean carrying more adhesives. It means being more thoughtful in your planning and knowing what you're going to do. And so you can use a translucent silicone that's a one-stop shop, or you could start moving towards like Axiom silicones that are actually color tinted silicones that will match the color of the countertop material you're working with. Now, if you know you're taking out a brown countertop or a gray countertop, you're going to need to know, hey, I want to use a gray or a brown Axiom silicone to put in that joint between the deck and the backsplash so that we get a really clean looking joint there, right? This is kind of taking you from being, a Kia manufacturer up to a Mercedes or BMW type manufacturer, right? You're getting more specific. You're giving a higher quality product. It is going to take more planning. It is going to take more money because you got to have a different type of silicone, and all of that is a value add. So you need to charge more for the customer, right? This is one of those things where customers try and shop for countertops and they just try and figure out who's got the best price. Well, I mean, if you're doing what you want to do and you need to do to give the ultimate experience, you need to be explaining this to the customer, right? Hey, ma'am, we are going to use this to hold your countertops down. When it comes to this joint, we're going to use a color match silicone because that's going to give you a premium product and look the best. Like, these are all things you need to sell to the customer because the customer doesn't know any of this. So if you do want to take your game to the next level, you might want to look at using the colored silicones that will fill those joints and just look flawless. Now, those are going to be a little bit more expensive, but again, it's going to take your game to the next level, and it's going to take some planning. So that is your silicones. One thing I also want to discuss, because this comes up a lot, I mentioned in the last video, hey, if you want to take your game to the next level, you might not want to use silicone to mount undermount sinks. And I got a flood of emails telling me, oh, you can use that. We've been doing that forever. And yes, you can use silicone to mount undermount sinks. You can also use it to stick backsplashes to walls. It's been done forever. I probably have mounted personally 1,500 sinks with silicone in undermounts. My only, warning or advice would be, if you're going to use silicone to mount a sink, I would do it in the shop. I'd have your countertop upside down. I would put my blocks on. I would put my silicone around the sink. I would set my sink. I would add my mechanical back and up fasteners on it, put some pressure on it, and let that silicone set up overnight. It takes time for silicone to set up and get its working strength. If you're trying to attach it in the field and use silicone and you're moving that thing around and it's sloshing around and you don't get a good seal up to the bottom of that countertop, there's a good chance it will fail. And we get a lot of calls from customers whose sinks have failed asking us, hey, my sink failed. What do you recommend I reattach it with? And I would say that we probably get at least from nationwide 3 to 5 calls or emails about this every month. There are a lot of undermount sinks that are falling off because people did not get a good seal with the silicone. So if you're going to use silicone, mount that sink in the shop. Make sure it gets a good bond, then take it out and install it. Now, your other option for mounting things, right? Silicone, again, is more of a sealant. It is not a structural adhesive. So if you want to have more of a structural bond, we recommend you take a look at the MS polymers. The polymers are going to be more of a structural adhesive. And here we've got 3 different types of polymers for 3 different specific applications. Now, they can cross over a little bit, but each of these is designed for a specific application. So the first we have is the substrate bonder. Now, this is like if you were doing Corian countertops and you've got to put your underlayment on it so it sits on the countertop to raise that edge so it doesn't interfere with the drawer, or you have a 2 cm countertop that you need to put some plywood down so you can have your laminated edge and it clears the drawer. You got to have that subdeck on there. The substrate bonder is the perfect adhesive for bonding that countertop to that substrate. It is specifically designed for that. It is not quite as thick. It's a little bit more flowy. So when the countertop sets down on top of it, it'll nestle down. It doesn't poof it up off the top. It kind of squishes down and spreads out and disperses so that that 2cm or coring gets a full bearing on that substrate. So the substrate bonder is for substrates, underlayments, anything, whatever you want to call it in your neck of the woods. Some people call it underlayment, some people call it subdeck. This is for attaching subdecks to either like corian or a 2cm material, or if you have a 3cm that's got a 3cm lamination, so it's 6 centimeter, you need to put some subdeck under there to lift that up. This is what you're going to use. It is a polymer and it works great on subdecks. Your next option is SinkLock. This is the polymer. It is kind of, I guess you would say, as far as viscosity and squishiness, kind of halfway between High-Tack and halfway between the substrate bonder. It's going to disperse good, but it's still going to have a little bit of thickness there. So if there's any unevenness in that porcelain bowl, it's going to bond. Now, this is what we recommend if you were going to be mounting sinks on site. We know there's a lot of fabricators. They cut those sinks out in the field, they take it in, and then they're undermounting that sink in the field. Now, I will say, if you want to take your game to the next level, have those sinks cut before you even show up to the customer's home. It's, you know, maybe it's just me, but it's not super professional to be cutting and throwing dust all over the customer's home and having to clean that up, right? There is a lot of work that you're going to have to do sometimes, custom work in a customer's yard. But if the sink's ready to go, you can already make sure that sink is perfectly polished. You make sure there's no miscuts in the field. But, you know, if you still need to get out there, let's say you've got a vanity top that's already got cabinets set on the ends and you need to slide that vanity in and then you need to undermount that sink in the field, you'll want to use this. And the reason why is if you use a silicone and you pull that sink up, it's going to take probably overnight for it to bond and hold that sink. So your mechanical fasteners are going to have to hold that sink tight, or you're going to have to come up with something to hold that sink up so that it gets a good bond and doesn't fail. When it comes to the polymers, as soon as that sink gets set up there, you're going to have to hold it for 30 to 45 seconds, maybe a minute, and you're going to get a pretty darn good bond. Now, it's not cured, but it's going to hold it. It's not going to keep trying to sag away as like it does with the silicone. You're going to get a much stronger bond that bonds much more quickly. So you can set that in place, put your mechanical fasteners on it to hold it, and you are good to go. There's going to be a much lower chance that your sink is going to fail over time. So that is where the SinkLock comes in handy. The last one is this High-Tack. Now, this is a thicker polymer. This has the best bite of any of the polymers, and this is mostly used, you could use it for setting sinks. When it comes to setting sinks, though, it's going to be thicker, so when you pull it up, it's not going to get quite that tight of a gap. So if you don't have a reveal there that's going to hide that, just know you're going to see a thicker ring around the sink because this is not going to compress as much. But if you have, you know, a porcelain sink that's got a lot of undulations in it, you got one of those cheap Chinese sinks that's like a wave, and you want to put this on and it'll get a good bite on all of those undulations and give you a good seal. So you can use this for sinks too. Now, where it really excels is when it comes to vertical applications or walls. Now, you can use silicone to attach shower walls. People have been using silicone for a long time. But again, silicone is more of a sealant and not a structural adhesive. So if you have a shower wall that say you're putting corian on and it's got some undulations in it that you're having to shim out, we recommend using the High-Tack. You can put your little adhesive pillows on there. You can put your panels up onto the wall. It is going to bite and it is going to grip. And you're not going to have any issues with it coming off because it is more of a structural single component adhesive and it is going to bond very, very well. In fact, it is going to bond so well, you only probably got 30 seconds to a minute to move that panel where you want, and then it is going to bite and hold up. So if you're doing, let's say, a corian shower panel, or you're doing a quartz shower panel, and you want to do a hard seam to pull two panels together, I recommend you get it all level, put your High-Tack pillows on the wall, put your panel up into the High-Tack, let it set up exactly where you want it, get your level on it, make sure it's nice and level, make sure your reveal is good at the top and the bottom, and it's where you want. you know, put that there, and it is pretty much going to hold. We were out at a fabricator that was doing a bunch of emergency room wall panels, and they were having to put Corian panels up in the entire emergency room so that, you know, blood splattered and stuff, it would stay clean. And they were using the High-Tack, and they were putting it up, and, you know, after about a minute, that panel was affixed on the wall. It was not going anywhere. They were still putting some structural supports from one wall to the other just to hold it, to make sure nothing happened. But once it was up there, it was set in place after about a minute. So what we recommend, put that first panel up, get it set in place, then take your second panel, dry fit that seam, make sure it's clean, make sure it's tight, you know, mark where the end of that panel is, take your second panel, put it to the side, come put back on more High-Tack where it needs to go, where that second panel goes. The High-Tack is on the wall now where you want it. Take your SinkLock Pro or your knife grade adhesive, run it down the seam that you're going to hard seam, get that adhesive on there, put some adhesive on your second panel, get your suction cups, put that second panel up onto the wall, pull that seam tight. You're going to make sure you got squeeze out everywhere. If you don't have squeeze out, you're going to take your SinkLock or your knife grade, put some more adhesive in there, pull it tight with your clamps, and then it is stuck, right? If you are using the High-Tack and you don't prep that seam first and you put the second panel on and you're going to go, okay, it's fine, and then start putting adhesive in, that panel is going to be set in place and you're going to have a tough time getting a tight seam. So we recommend prepping that seam first, making sure it's good, then stick your second panel into the High-Tack, pull that seam closed with the adhesive, and then you are good to go. It just makes for a much cleaner finish and you're not going to have any issues. So I feel like this is a pretty good overview. If you guys have any more questions, let me know. One thing I didn't bring with me, but if you are using these types of adhesives right here, you can use a manual caulk gun. You're not going to have any problems. These are fairly thin caulkings. When it comes to the High-Tack, if you're doing like the fabricator was doing that emergency room that had like 20 or 30 wall panels in each room, you're probably going to want to get a battery powered caulk gun, because this is a very thick adhesive. And when you're squeezing this all day long, putting those pillows up, you are going to be sore and exhausted. So if you have a battery powered gun, you can just pull the trigger, it'll put the adhesive out for you, and it will make your install go so much more smoothly and give you a much better finish. So that's kind of the overview on here. If you guys have any questions, shoot us an email, let us know. We love helping you guys take your game to the next level, and we'll see you soon. Thanks.